Welcome back to the Lost Cause Ranch. 30 years ago, my favorite Land Rover in the collection, our 1996 Eco Challenge Discovery, was up in British Columbia to support an adventure race, the Eco Challenge Adventure Race. Last week, I just got the opportunity to do my own adventure up in British Columbia, and we were able to compete in the North American leg of the Defender Trophy, which I guess if you're not familiar with, the shortest I can explain it to you as it is the rebirth of the Camel Trophy. Yes, all those grainy pictures and VHS tapes from the 70s, 80s, 90s of guys out in the wilderness in Land Rovers, that Camel Trophy. There was 120 of us, broke up into 3 separate waves of 40, and we each spent 2 days up in Mission, BC, and those 2 challenging days culminated into what is one of the most entertaining uses of Land Rovers I've ever seen. Well, we're going to recap my complete experience with Defender Trophy, starting with landing in Vancouver. So we made it to Vancouver. We're at least in the right country at this point in time, and shockingly, they allowed me through customs. Probably wasn't the smartest move. So the hotel I'm staying at tonight is like 3.5 miles away. I have like 5 hours until I can check in there, so I think I'm gonna hoof it. I think we're gonna walk our way over. We got plenty of time, and I just spent the last frickin' 10 hours in an airport and airplanes, so I'd much rather be on my feet than riding in some bus. But that is if I can get my bearings and figure out where I'm at and where I'm going. Hey, maybe we can bust the compass out and test some of our orienteering skills on the way to the hotel. Wouldn't that be something if I get lost before the competition even starts? But speaking of the competition, we start tomorrow morning at like 7 a.m., 7:30, somewhere around then. So I got a few hours to chill. I'll edit a video this afternoon, get that up for tomorrow. I'm currently just trying to find a sidewalk, to be honest. Airports are usually like the biggest cluster ever. They just kind of wrap you around a bunch of places, and they aren't really designed to walk in and out of. They're designed to drive in and out of, or get taxied in and out of. Per the norm, we're gonna make stuff more difficult than it needs to be, but I think I'm heading in the right direction. I haven't seen a single Land Rover yet. I mean, I've been in the airport up until about 5 minutes ago. I see buildings over in the distance. All right, I'll level with you. The real reason why I'm walking is it's kind of a good way to clear your head, keep your body moving. I've always done my best thinking while moving. I can't even talk on the phone without pacing around. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around what's gonna happen over the next couple days, which is difficult to do because I have zero idea outside of watching a couple videos on YouTube that Defender posted of some other qualifiers. So we're kind of in uncharted territory as to what is gonna happen. I'm super excited. We're in the first wave, so we don't even get like the benefit of talking to people ahead of time that did it before us. I'll go out there and make all the mistakes right off the bat for everyone else. I think I'm gonna drop a pin right here, because worst case scenario, if I get too lost, I just head back here and ship myself home. If we were coming a day early, this is the hotel they recommended we stay at. It's where we're gonna get picked up in the morning and shipped off to the Zajac Ranch, I believe it is. As you guys have probably picked up on in the past, I'm a bit of a cheap person, so we're continuing onward. I found one for $80 cheaper, so why not complicate life for $80? See, now this is definitely a little more my speed. I'm a bit more of an enter your room from the outside type of guy. Super classy. So I woke up on day 1 and walked myself back over to the correct hotel to meet up with everyone, as that is where our bus was taking off from. I wonder what they're here for. And as soon as I walked in the lobby, I knew I was in the correct place. The amount of North Face gear, just the look of everyone was kind of what you would expect from a bunch of Land Rover and outdoor nerds. As soon as we walked into the lobby, I knew my chances of actually going to Africa were pretty slim. I mean, one of the guys just spent 120 days going across to Africa in a old FJ camper. I just spent 120 days in Iowa. So the lobby was buzzing, everyone was getting checked in. You could tell there was a little bit of nervousness, but more so excitement out of everyone. See, the whole thing about the Defender Trophy experience is they really didn't give you any idea of what was going to happen. They gave you hints, everything was very vague. They gave you what could possibly need to be prepared for, but no one knew what we were going to do, which is pretty awesome if you think about it. You get 120 people going after something and no one knows exactly what to expect. Everyone's kind of on an even playing field at that point.
Just got signed in here. We got our little badge, a very detailed map, and what we got going on in the first day. Right there's gonna be the fun one. We have a swim,
and it's like below 40 degrees out Fahrenheit. Cold. Everyone's in there buzzing. It's pretty freaking awesome. It's official now. So we hopped into our bus and it was an hour-and-a-half ride out of Vancouver to Mission, BC, kind of up in the hills, mountains, I guess. I don't know what you consider them. And we're off. So everyone's just collecting their bags back off the bus. The bus is appropriately colored, but man, look at the setup they got going on here. Didn't know what to expect when we were rolling in here, but this definitely suffices. Holy cow, this place is way cool. Thank you so much. So we just got corralled in, got all our stuff, got the bib on and everything, picked up our dry bag with some bits in it, and they kind of just told us to grab what we need for the day because we're just taking it with us, which is wonderful because I don't know what we need for today. Very prepared as always.
I think I take the green one.
And look at what we found all the way up in Canada. Our buddies from Lucky 8. Those freaking guys are everywhere. So we dropped all our bags at the ranch and got everything swapped over. They gave us some swag. We got a cool little hat. Nice Yeti Defender Trophy coffee mug. We got a Yeti water bottle. I wish I could show you that, but mine's somewhere in British Columbia. I don't know where I lost it on the trip back home. We got a Pelican dry bag to carry our stuff along with us through the trophy competition. And we got kind of a cool little hard shell jacket. And the color theme for Defender Trophy is quite nice. They also gave us a few snacks in that dry bag, but we had to get everything kind of sorted out. Our actual bags were not going to be accessible to us. Then before we started off the competition, we had a little introduction and orientation, I guess you would call it. Not everyone there was a big Land Rover person. We had just some outdoorsy people, some adventurous people, some people that were enthusiasts from other brands. So they gave us a little walkthrough on the new Defender and how a lot of the stuff and buttons and features worked, along with giving us the time to test our knot skills. And I needed that, so that was pretty good. I'm not really a knot guy. Not a knot guy. I'm more of a, if you can't tie a knot, tie a lot. But in the theme of the competition, they wanted you to be correct. So it was nice to practice some of that out.
Really excited to have you all here today. My name is Craig Dickey. I am the Brand Experience and Public Relations Manager for Jaguar Land Rover. Wine.
Good image. All right, so we'll just show you that. Trailer assist, we might bring that up. Approach and departure angles. Can somebody give me a definition of what approach and departure angles are?
So doors are closed. We're in park, which is fine. Seatbelts can be off right now. Let's go ahead and engage low range. Yep. So here's your trick, and I'm gonna give you guys this one.
So with our little orientation done, we began Defender Trophy. And the first day was much more skills and strength and endurance based than vehicle based. They kind of threw you through the gauntlet, and then we got to have fun on the second day. But there was 40 of us there. They split us up into 8 groups of 5. No, they split us up into 5 groups of 8, and we moved on to our tasks. Our group, which obviously was the best group, started off with the high lift jack task. What we had to do is split up into teams of 4 and see how far we could winch a stuck or broken Defender with just a high lift jack. No power, no winch, we just had to crank away. And we had to do that safely And that one was scored by the distance we were able to pull the defender. The way they structured the entire event was kind of neat. It was based around teamwork, not necessarily pure individual skill. Your individual skill mattered, but what mattered more is how you could use that individual skill in a team. And throughout the entire event, they changed our teams up, and we rotated out, and we rotated tasks, we rotated positions. So even in this high lift jack point, we had to rotate who was cranking on the jack, who was steadying the jack, who was hooking chains, and who was in the vehicle. After that, we moved on to what was probably the least enjoyable event for me. This wasn't really scored. It was more of a pass-fail to make sure you weren't gonna die in case you moved on in the competition. And that was swimming. I think they probably planned on using the lake to swim, but it was 40 degrees out. The water temp wouldn't be safe without wetsuits and whatnot, and that just would have been kind of difficult to organize. So we went inside and we used the pool. They just wanted to make sure you could swim 50 meters without stopping. The only thing was, it was kind of vague what they wanted you to do, because they gave you 10 minutes to do it. They also told you to not stop swimming for 10 minutes. The last time I swam laps in a pool was probably 20 some years ago, and it showed. If you don't swim, swimming for 10 minutes without stopping is kind of a challenge. But we passed, we didn't drown, I'm still here, so moving on. So while we were doing this, the other 4 groups were doing the same challenges, just offset. We just kind of moved about the property, everyone doing a different task at a different time, rotating through them. Our next one was really challenging, the interviews. As you know, I don't like to talk, so it was tough. But no, they just kind of want a little background story on each person. So each person individually got interviewed for a couple minutes, and then we moved on to what was worse than the swim course, the ropes course. Yes, a high ropes course. And if any of you remember me building my shop, heights and Joe do not get along. So this one had me nervous. We get there and the first 2 gentlemen in our group just buzz through the thing and just kill it. And that made me more nervous. I say you're probably 30, 35 feet up, climbing some nets, some slack line, and then we got to the tires. Some swinging tires. I don't do this. I don't know how to do this. I'm kind of proud of myself that I didn't lock up from looking down. But man, swinging from tire to tire was a challenge. And then once you get out of whack, you use a ton of upper body strength and you just kind of gas yourself out. I ended up sitting in one of the tires because I fell beneath them and I had to use my legs to kind of hook back into it. But I did make it past the tires, but I timed out at that point because I was sitting in a tire for too long. Apparently, you can't just sit in a tire in a competition. So with one of the obstacles left, I timed out. Seemed to be, at least from what I saw, the tires were the most challenging part for most people. If you weren't going to make the entire course, the tires are what took you out. So after the ropes, there was a task on our little schedule that was called Le Pensilo. Throughout the entire morning, we were all kind of trying to guess what Le Pensilo is. Obviously, some sort of pencil. We didn't know what that meant, but just to let us know that we were truly in the wilderness, even though we were at a ranch for the first few hours of the competition, doing our skills challenges here, we walk up on a brown bear, so we had to pause for a minute and just let him hang out. It's kind of cool seeing bear just wandering around. The pencil was one of the neatest things I've kind of seen as a challenge. I almost want to make this setup for here in Iowa for at like family get-togethers or anything. What it was is a piece of large PVC conduit that had concrete filled in the top with 4 ropes in the top and 4 ropes near the bottom that were offset 45 degrees, along with a 12 by 12 board that had a maze in it. And the 8 of us had to work in unison, keeping the pencil upright and moving it through the maze as many times as we could in the allotted time. It was kind of funny that in the rotation of this, they put this after the ropes course. So you go and kill yourself with some upper body strength hanging onto ropes, and then you have to do more rope work holding this thing and moving it around the board. It's a neat challenge because if everything is synced up and perfect and the piece of conduit is straight up and down, it is not a ton of physical effort because you're all working together. But once it starts to tip, or you have someone on the other end counteracting and pulling a little too hard and you have to pull, it starts to become very difficult and very tiresome. But this was the first moment in the entire event that I realized just how awesome the entire group was. So they stuck 40 of us strangers together in a high stress environment where we were competing against each other. So out of the 120 people, ultimately only 2 Americans and 2 Canadians are gonna move on to the global final. So that means 116 of us weren't gonna make it. And we were all competing for those 4 spots. And they stuffed a bunch of strangers together, made them do tough things, and made them work together as a team. And you know what surprised me the most? Everyone did. Everyone was great. Everyone worked together. Everyone was so nice. There was no bickering. There was no yelling. If someone was struggling, everyone else in the group lifted them up and did what they could to make sure that person succeeded. It was just something to see, and it never ceases to amaze me every time I go to one of these Land Rover events or outdoor adventure or just outdoorsy type people, just how great that community is. It's generally filled with good people, and this was no exception. It was really neat seeing everyone try to make sure everyone else succeeded, because at the end of the day, if your team failed, you as an individual also failed. It just really shocked me because pretty much everyone there was highly successful in life in some sort or fashion. And usually when you put that type of group together, a lot of people can butt heads, a lot of yelling can happen. There's a lot of chiefs, everyone thinks they're right, but everyone actually worked together pretty well. And once we got the hang of working through the maze, it was really neat seeing all the movements from all 8 of us working together click, and you could zing that thing through in certain spots. That was probably one of the tasks that just opened my eyes up to how well everyone in the group could work together. But the pencil was our last task for the day before we moved on to navigation. So I mentioned before, I'm not big on the orienteering stuff. I have a general sense of direction, but that is where the team aspect of the event comes into handy, because we could all just rely on different strengths and weaknesses. Well, you don't rely on weaknesses. You use people's strengths to make up other people's weaknesses. As a group, you can usually get a lot of stuff accomplished. So the navigation task, we were split up into 4 teams of 10, and there was 4 different trails in an undisturbed section of woods. And we started off, they gave us a bearing and a distance to a waypoint, and then that waypoint would have another bearing and distance, and so on and so on. And we just had to go through and find each one, and there were some codes we had to write down. So our group did a great job in delegating tasks. So we had 10 of us. We made 2 note takers for redundancy, 2 people shooting bearings with the compass for redundancy, and 2 people pacing for redundancy. And we could average everything out, because if you're familiar with it, tracking pace through a dense vegetation is quite interesting because you don't have a consistent stride. So like me, on 100 meters, I take 72 paces. So full steps, counting 1 foot, is 72 on a typical walk. If you get into something with high vegetation and not a straight line, you might have to account for 90. So having 2 people do that helps minimize the chance of getting lost. Then we had 4 additional people that were scouting for the waypoint stick, which is interesting. So we were group 2, our color was green. We kind of messed up on the first one, and we found a different trail, and we didn't realize it as a team until we started questioning it on the second waypoint, and then we made the decision on the third one that we were on the wrong trail. We were really good at finding the other team's trail, so we took a pause. 2 of us went back to find the original one, and on our way back we found one of our correct points, and we had our team start from there. So the two of us got back and found the original waypoint, got our code off that, and we did a lot of running through the woods trying to catch up because this was a timed event. We could time out. So from being an entire team at the beginning, we kind of split up to a divide and conquer to try and split up the workload because we were super limited on time. And we ended up getting caught back up, and we got to our 4th waypoint, got that. And then we got to our 5th waypoint, which would be the last one that would shoot us out of the woods. And it happened to be a duplicate card of the 4th one. So there was a mix up at some point in the trail building. But either way, what other team gets to say they pretty much found an entire 2 sets of waypoints? We just went for extra credit. But that was truly a blast, and we did get out of the woods. As it turns out, pretty much all the teams were finding the wrong waypoints, so we weren't alone in that aspect. But after the navigation, we jumped into what was probably the most physically tasking part of the entire event. The entire 2 days, this was it. They handed us a 2.5 gallon roto pack of water and told us to run. They didn't tell us how long. I still don't know how long it was. Just off my experience, I want to say it's probably close to 2 miles, but I could be off because I haven't done a lot of running with 2.5 gallons of water. It was cold out through most of the day, so pretty much everyone was layered up. I had that hard shell jacket over a sweatshirt, over some thermals. I was sweating. It was physically hard, but running's my background. I've done ultramarathon stuff, so even though I'm not physically trained up for the ultras at this point in time, I have a base level of fitness that let me excel in that to some extent. But what was nice is the group of us leading up front got there, we dropped our water off, and all of us went back to help carry anyone that needed a hand. And there was one point on the road where there was a stop sign and some caution tape that was kind of confusing, so we went back and made sure everyone was heading in the right direction, because the entire event is working together as a team. Having yourself succeed doesn't help if the rest of the team doesn't succeed as well. But that run led us to camp, which camp was a pretty cool setup. There's something about rolling in, seeing 12 trophy defenders lined up and 40 some tents sitting in the woods. They definitely wanted to give us the full outdoor experience. We had some freeze-dried meals that we had to rehydrate. A lot of us ate crunchy noodles because we were beyond hungry and didn't want to wait the 20 minutes. And then we went out and had a little night drive through the wood. This wasn't scored or part of the competition. This was just getting everyone familiar with the defenders before we hopped in them the next day. After that night drive, we got back probably around 11 o'clock and everyone was cashed, just went to bed. And then at 3 o'clock in the morning, the log trucks started rolling through and started waking most of the camp up. And if that didn't wake you up, they came by, woke us up at 6 o'clock to get rolling. Once again, we had breakfast, got up, had our breakfast. They put out coffee, which the first batch was all decaffeinated, instant coffee. So that was kind of a cruel joke. And we had more freeze-dried breakfast. So the first day was challenging. And I think it was kind of a test to kind of weed you down, break you down a little bit. And then we moved on to putting our skills to use in a Land Rover. The second day was a frickin' blast. It was still tough, but it was a blast. Once again, we split up into groups of 8. So 2 defenders, 4 people in each defender. We had 7 in our group. One of the competitors got some food poisoning and had to get some attention for that. Thankfully, they're all right. They were able to join us later at dinner and everything. But we moved on and they gave us a new schedule. And our first task for that day was change a wheel, which was pretty cool. You think, jack a car up, zip the lug nuts off, put the spare tire on, you know, the one that was on the back of the vehicle. You just take that off, put that on. No, they had 2 wheels sitting down in a pond. We had to use our knot skills and make a tripod and then use a rope and pulley and lift that tire right out of the pond. One of us was getting wet. On our team, AJ hopped right in there and didn't skip a beat, didn't care. He said he was fine with getting wet. Tell you, if you do it again, that was a smart move because he may be moving on. But not only did we have to get our wheel out, we also had to prop the Defender up in a fashion on the terrain to lift one of the tires off the ground on the Defender because we couldn't use a jack. That was a fun experience. We, as our group, had the fastest time at that point, mainly because we were the first ones to do it. So after that one, we moved right next door to another neat setup. It was neat seeing how they could come up with some interesting uses of the Defenders while doing team challenges. So this was stacking a pyramid. There was 3 like Lincoln log pyramid sections, and we had to stack and restack from side to side. And the challenge was to do this as many times as possible. 4 people holding ropes to steady the hook, grabbing those pieces, and interestingly enough, 2 Defenders doing all the lift work. So they had them rigged up with some snatch blocks from the uprights down to the hook, and we had to, in synchronized motion, run the Defenders forward and back to do all the upward lifting and sideward motion. And the first one is a little bit of a struggle getting everything figured out, but man, what a rewarding feeling once you get everything synced up and it just starts moving very, very easy. You have one person kind of guiding the 2 people in the vehicles on which direction to go. Once it clicks and you start going, it's pretty neat to see how smooth you can pick up and stack pieces. So that was a really fun one, and it kind of was like similar fashion to the pencil in the day before, where you're working together as a team. You have a little bit of strength factor, and like every event, as I mentioned before, they made you rotate through. So it wasn't the same 2 people driving, it wasn't the same 4 people on the ropes, it wasn't the same person directing. Throughout our time, we had to switch and make everyone kind of have a taste of each position. And after that, we moved over to the trials course, which was a off-road test with the Land Rovers. We had to repair a bridge and go through different terrain scenarios, all while not bottoming out the Defender. We couldn't scrape on anything, and to complete each task, the license plate had a 1 through 8 section on the bottom of it, and each obstacle had a hole punch connected to a cable, and we had to punch the corresponding space on the license plate, which brings an interesting challenge because that cable was only so long. So you had to maneuver the Defender into the correct position for the person to reach the license plate and punch the hole. There was a rock garden, there was some water, there was some dugout ditches with a ton of articulation, which is pretty interesting because you have to pick the right line to not bottom out. And then there was some reversing up into some rocks and just a bunch of different scenarios that test out the capability of the Defender. And if you look at some of the stuff that it's doing, it is pretty impressive what a bone stock new Defender can do. So these were stock tires, stock everything, and it's pretty fun seeing what they are capable of. And that's kind of another cool aspect of the entire event, is it's showing you what a completely stock Defender that you can go to any Land Rover dealer and buy can do. No mods, nothing crazy, stock height, stock tires, stock tire size. So after that one, we had lunch, and then we transitioned over to kind of the beach area. The next event was my favorite event of the weekend. They call it the auto test, but essentially it was almost like an autocross on the beach. They had a bunch of gates and sections set up with PVC pipe that were all lettered. I think there was like 10 of them, and each of them had like a 90-degree turn or somewhere in that vicinity through different levels of terrain. And you had one driver, one navigator, and they essentially threw you a course map that had the layout of all those gates. And then on the left-hand side, it had the order you had to go through those gates. They had like 50 options, and each of them was different. So they were lettered, and they just gave you which one you had to go through. So it was a real team effort of the navigator directing you to which gate to go through and in which order. And on top of having to go to a different lettered gate, they also switch directions. So they told you which direction to go through that gate. And this was a timed event, so we got after it. We had 3 people in our group for this one, so all of us had to double up on tasks. I had to drive twice. The other 2 guys had to navigate twice. And we as a group frickin' killed it. All of us had under 3 minutes for our time. I had 2:21 for my first one, which was the fastest time of day. If you competed in the second 2 waves, let me know what your fastest time was. I'm kind of curious to see how it all stacked up. But there is nothing better than getting after one of the P400s on the beach. The P400s have about 400 horsepower, and they make some pretty cool turbo noises when you really get after them. So after the auto test, we moved on to what was our final like individual test for the weekend. I keep saying weekend, it was the middle of the week. It was another cool little setup. They called it Parts Exchange, and as I walked closer, I happened to recognize the trailer. Turns out it's Justin from Lucky Eight's, one of his camp trailers, and got a neat surprise as we walk up. Yes, Lost Cause Ranch was on the trailer, and that gave me quite the smile. And once we got home, I thanked Justin for that. But that challenge was, we had to go collect 6 random parts in the beach, toss them in the trailer, and then they had a big half moon course set up, and we had to back the trailer through. So we had 2 spotters, 1 person backing, and he did a fantastic job backing all the way through. The spotting was interesting because they wouldn't let you behind the trailer or anywhere near being behind the trailer, and that naturally is where you want to be when you are spotting someone. But either way, that was a blast. And it was neat seeing the Lost Cause Ranch up at Defender Trophy. After that, that completed all the individual tasks from the weekend. As I buzzed through them, talking about them in this video, it doesn't seem like they're as challenging as they were, but I assure you, it was a lot of work. But it was neat seeing everyone work together and everyone was able to lean on each other. I'm obviously not the best knot tire or navigator, so in those scenarios, our team had someone else who was more apt at that stuff do it, because that is more appropriate. I was better at counting my pace, so that's what role I took on. Knot tying, I was better at staying back and making sure the rope was not getting caught up because you didn't want to trust my knot. So just remember, in life, you don't need to know everything. Just know what you know and leverage those skills with other people, and you can get a lot accomplished. But that moved us on to the final task. And being the first group out, this was a pretty awesome sight. We walk over the crest on the beach and we see this. Yes, 2 defenders floating on rafts. What do you do with that? Well, you have a race. So we split off into 2 teams of 20 and we paddled 2 frickin' defenders around some buoys in the lake. Where else are you ever gonna get an opportunity to do that? That's gonna be like one of the most iconic pictures I'll ever be a part of in my life. And it was great. So we're obviously competing against each other. And what do? We take off. Our team's in the lead and we beach it. We get the thing frickin' stuck and we had to back off. Our team captain hopped into the lake, pushed us off the sandbar, and then we just frickin' rocketed and we made up some ground and we were paddling. Around us every year we have dragon boat races on the Mississippi, and this reminded me of that. People yelling and keeping the strokes consistent. We worked well as a team with our left power, right power, and all that, and we ended up getting our defender out and back in first place. How cool is that? Not that it mattered that much, but, and that is Defender Trophy. What better way to end off what was probably some of the best 2 days of my life than to paddle a Defender. After that, we got transported back to the ranch and we had our first real meal. 3 of us were eating together, and lo and behold, the CEO of JLR North America came and sat with us. That was another huge highlight of the event. That shows you what Land Rover is putting behind this event. The CEO of North America Jaguar Land Rover was there the entire event. He was bouncing around the entire day. I am happy to see a manufacturer put this much effort into something like this. This was a huge lift. There was probably 20 some defenders there. There was 60 some staff members. They rented out a awesome spot. I understand it's a marketing exercise, but remember that when you're going to buy your next new vehicle. Look at what Land Rover's doing. Look at what they're giving people the opportunity to do. There was 120 of us that probably had some of the best times of our lives on those 2 days because of Land Rover. And after our dinner, we were able to have a couple adult sodas around the campfire, retell all our stories, and then we had what was probably worse than sleeping in tents: bunk beds. But that is Defender Trophy. Looking back, I wish I would have got a little more actual footage. But when you're out competing, I'd rather just be in the moment. But either way, I appreciate you guys watching, appreciate you subscribing. And next year, make sure you sign up for Defender Trophy. Put your application in. I know everyone was worried about social media and this, that, and the other thing, or your Land Rover ownership history. There was a fair amount of people that didn't have new Defenders there. There was a fair amount of people who did not have social media, period. In fact, one of the gentlemen moving on from our wave didn't have an Instagram. So you don't need social media. Social media just worked to get me there. That was one of my strengths. The YouTube channel is one of my strengths. So don't be afraid to sign up next year, and pay attention to Destination Defender. We are narrowed down to 12 North Americans. So off those 3 waves, we are narrowed down to 12 North Americans, and they're going to narrow it down to 4 at Destination Defender. And I just can't wait to see who makes it. Hopefully it's the wave one, guys.